5 years had passed since Emperor Zarthax made his historic announcement. The transition from the Kralaxian Empire to the Galactic Coalition had been difficult, messy, and sometimes dangerous, but humanity had been there every step of the way. Commander Sarah Flynn stood on the bridge of the Coalition Defense Station Guardian 7, watching ships from a dozen different species pass by on patrol routes. Beside her, Lieutenant Ben Morris monitored the communication channels, translating messages between species who had only recently stopped being enemies. Still weird seeing a Chithar battlecruiser flying alongside a Kralaxian destroyer, Ben commented. Tell me about it, Sarah agreed. 2 years ago, those two species were fighting each other. Now they're sharing patrol duties. The Chithar were an insectoid race that had been forcibly subjugated by the Kralaxians 3 centuries ago. When the Empire fell, they had immediately declared independence and had nearly gone to war for revenge. It had taken months of careful negotiation by human diplomats to convince them that the new coalition was different from the old empire. Guardian 7, this is transport vessel Meridian Dawn requesting docking clearance. A melodic voice came through the speakers. The Meridians were an aquatic species whose homeworld had been one of the Empire's first conquests. They had been among the most skeptical about the coalition. Meridian Dawn, you are cleared for docking Bay 12, Ben responded. Welcome to Guardian 7. Thank you, Guardian 7. It is good to be welcomed rather than commanded, Sarah smiled. Small moments like that made all the hard work worthwhile. Meanwhile, on the former imperial capital of Kralax Prime, now renamed Unity Station, Colonel Greg Turner was having a less pleasant day. He sat across from former War Marshal Drexen, who had been arrested for attempting to organize a military coup against the new coalition government. You're destroying everything we built, Drexen hissed, his scales dark with anger. 10,000 years of civilization thrown away for these mammals and their soft words. We're not destroying anything, Greg replied calmly. We're building something better. And before you call us soft, remember that we're only here because humanity's weapons made your empire's arsenal look like children's toys. Captain Melissa Parker entered the room carrying a data pad. Colonel, we've identified the other coup members. Mostly older military officers who can't adapt to the new system. How many casualties in the attempted coup? Greg asked. None, sir. They surrendered as soon as they realized we had detected their plans. Apparently, the idea of actually fighting humans terrified them more than prison. Greg looked back at Drexen. You see? Even your own people know that violence isn't the answer anymore. The galaxy has changed, Marshal. You can either change with it or spend the rest of your life angry about the past. Drexen said nothing, but something in his expression suggested Greg's words had struck home. On Earth, in a research facility in Geneva, Dr. Alice Morgan was working with a team of human and alien scientists on a project that would have been impossible 5 years ago. Beside her stood scientist Velran, a Kralaxian who had once designed weapons for the Empire and now designed medical equipment for the Coalition. The genetic sequencer is working, Alice announced, examining the results on her screen. Velran, your modifications to the molecular scanner are brilliant. I merely applied principles I learned from your human colleague Dr. Price, Velran said modestly. His approach to multidimensional analysis opened entirely new pathways. Nathan Price looked up from his own workstation and grinned. That's the beauty of cooperation. My ideas plus your experience equals breakthroughs neither of us could achieve alone. Alice pulled up a holographic display showing the combined research output of the Coalition in just 5 years. Medical advances that could cure diseases across dozens of species, agricultural techniques that could feed billions, energy systems that were clean and efficient, transportation technology that made travel between stars faster and safer. We've accomplished more in 5 years of cooperation than the Empire did in 1,000 years of conquest, Alice said with satisfaction. Back on Unity Station, the annual Coalition Summit was about to begin. The massive conference hall had been built specifically for this purpose, with environmental controls that could accommodate everything from methane-breathing species to beings that lived in high-pressure water tanks. President Helen Brooks, now in her second term, stood with Vice President Marcus Webb, reviewing the agenda one last time. Ambassador Claire Nelson had become the Coalition's Secretary of Diplomatic Affairs, coordinating between hundreds of different species and cultures. 73 member species so far, Claire reported. Another 27 considering membership. And we've received first contact signals from 6 previously unknown civilizations who heard about the coalition and want to join. Amazing, Helen said. When we first met the Kralaxians, I never imagined it would lead to this. Emperor Zarthax, now officially called Chancellor Zarthax of the Kralaxian systems, approached them. He looked older but happier than he had 5 years ago. The stress of maintaining an empire through fear had been replaced by the satisfaction of building something through hope. President Brooks, Chancellor Webb, he greeted them warmly. Are you ready for the ceremony? As ready as we'll ever be, Helen replied. Though I still think having Jake give the speech instead of me would have been more appropriate. Admiral Morrison declined, Marcus reminded her. He said he was just a soldier who got lucky. His words, not mine. Jake Morrison had indeed been promoted to admiral and now commanded the coalition's combined defense fleet. He had insisted that the politicians should do the talking, while soldiers like him kept everyone safe. The conference hall filled with representatives from 73 different species. Some walked, some flew, some slithered, and some rolled. Translators worked overtime to ensure everyone could understand everyone else. Human engineers had designed the translation system, combining the best of Kralaxian linguistic databases with Earth's artificial intelligence. Chancellor Zarthax stepped up to the central platform and raised his hands for silence. The hall quieted and thousands of eyes in hundreds of different configurations turned to face him. 5 years ago, I made a choice that many called foolish. I chose to transform an empire built on conquest into a coalition built on cooperation. I was told it would fail. I was told that species were too different to work together. I was told that only force could maintain order in the galaxy. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. I am pleased to report that every single one of those predictions was wrong. Not only has the coalition survived, it has thrived. We have accomplished more together in 5 years than the Empire accomplished alone in centuries. The hall erupted in applause, cheers, and various other expressions of approval from species that didn't have hands to clap. But we did not achieve this alone, Zarthax continued. We had help from an unexpected source. A young species who met our threats with laughter, who saw our weapons and were not afraid, who offered friendship when they could have chosen conquest. He gestured to the human delegation. Humanity taught us that strength is not about how many you can conquer, but about how many you can help. They showed us that true power comes not from fear but from cooperation. They proved that being different is not a weakness but a strength. Helen felt tears in her eyes as she listened. Marcus squeezed her hand supportively. Today we dedicate this monument to that moment 5 years ago, Zarthax announced. The moment when humanity met the Empire and instead of terror, they responded with laughter. That laughter changed the galaxy. A holographic display activated in the center of the hall, showing a memorial statue that had been erected on Earth, on the Moon, and on Unity Station. It depicted a human and a Kralaxian facing each other, but instead of weapons they held out their hands in friendship. The inscription below read simply, "The day the galaxy learned to laugh." After the ceremony, informal gatherings broke out throughout the station. Species that had once been enemies now shared meals and stories. Scientists exchanged ideas. Artists collaborated on projects. Children of different species played games together. Jake Morrison found himself in a quiet observation deck with Vexith, now retired from his position as Chancellor but still active as an advisor. They stood in silence watching the ships of the Coalition fleet conduct training exercises together. Do you ever regret it? Jake asked. Your old life, I mean. When the Empire was powerful and you were feared across the galaxy. Vexith considered the question carefully. I do not miss the fear, but sometimes I miss the certainty. The Empire had clear rules, clear purposes. This new coalition is messy and complicated. Yeah, freedom usually is, Jake agreed. But it is also beautiful, Vexith added, watching a mixed crew of humans and Kralaxians working together on a nearby ship. We spent 10,000 years trying to make the galaxy simple by making everyone the same. You humans showed us that the galaxy is better when everyone is different. Jake smiled. You know what the funny thing is? We were terrified when you first showed up. We spent 200 years preparing for alien invasion, building weapons, creating defenses, and when you finally arrived, you were nothing like what we expected. How so? The imperial capital world of Kralax Prime was a sight to behold. 3 massive moons hung in the purple sky above gleaming cities that had stood for thousands of years. The Grand Palace, home to Emperor Zarthax, rose from the center of the capital city like a mountain of crystal and metal. Inside the Imperial Council chamber, High Chancellor Vexith stood before the assembled leadership of the Kralaxian Empire. Emperor Zarthax sat on his throne, an imposing figure with deep black scales and 6 eyes that seemed to see everything. To his right stood Grand General Korthan, commander of the Imperial military. To his left sat Fleet Admiral Nexara, her silver scales marking her as one of the ancient bloodlines. Vexith had just finished presenting his report and the recorded data from the demonstration. The council chamber was silent as the Empire's leaders absorbed the information. "This is impossible," Grand General Korthan finally said, his voice harsh. "No species advances this quickly. They must have stolen this technology from someone else." "From whom?" Vexith asked calmly. "They claim they were alone in their region of space. We found no evidence of any other advanced species in their area. They developed everything themselves." "Then they're lying about their capabilities," War Marshal Drexen interjected. He was younger than most of the council, ambitious and aggressive. "This is an elaborate deception. We should return with the full might of the Imperial fleet and crush them." Fleet Admiral Nexara raised her hand for silence. "I have reviewed the sensor data personally. The readings are genuine. The humans have defensive capabilities far beyond our own. If we attack them, we will lose." "Unacceptable," Drexen shouted, rising from his seat. "The Kralaxian Empire has never lost a war. We will not start now with these primitive mammals." Emperor Zarthax finally spoke, his voice cutting through the argument like a blade. "Enough. Vexith, you spoke with these humans at length. What do they truly want?" Vexith straightened, choosing his words carefully. "They want friendship, Your Majesty. They want to learn from us and share their knowledge with us. They have no interest in conquest or dominance. They were genuinely excited to discover they weren't alone in the universe." "And you believe them?" the Emperor asked. "I do, Your Majesty. Their actions match their words. They could have destroyed my fleet easily, but they let us leave unharmed. They could have refused my return visit, but they welcomed me and showed me everything I asked to see. They have power, but they choose not to use it for violence." Korthan scoffed. "A pretty story. But power corrupts, Chancellor. Give them time and they'll be just like every other species seeking to expand and conquer." "Perhaps," Vexith admitted. "Or perhaps they truly are different. Either way, we cannot defeat them militarily. So we have only 2 choices. Reject their offer and remain isolated, or accept their offer and see what happens." The council erupted into heated debate. Some argued for isolation, claiming the Empire needed time to advance their technology. Others demanded war, insisting that the Empire's honor required them to fight. A few quieter voices suggested accepting the human offer. Emperor Zarthax listened to all of them, his expression unreadable. Finally, he raised his hand again and the chamber fell silent. "I will go to Earth myself," the Emperor declared. The council chamber exploded with protests. No Kralaxian emperor had left the capital world for diplomatic purposes in over 3,000 years. It was unprecedented, dangerous, and many argued beneath the Emperor's dignity. "Your Majesty, you cannot," Korthan pleaded. "If this is a trap, the Empire will be without leadership. Then you will choose a new emperor," Zarthax replied simply. "But I do not believe it is a trap. High Chancellor Vexith has staked his reputation and his life on his report. I trust him. More importantly, I am curious about these humans, a species that can laugh at the face of conquest, that builds weapons they hope never to use, that seeks friendship instead of domination. I want to meet them myself." 3 weeks later, the Emperor's personal vessel, the Eternal Light, dropped out of hyperspace near Earth. Unlike Vexith's earlier arrival, the ship came alone, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all channels. On Earth, President Helen Brooks stood in the diplomatic reception hall with her Vice President Marcus Webb and a full security detail. They had been given only a day's notice of the Emperor's arrival. Barely enough time to prepare. "This is either a very good sign or a very elaborate assassination attempt," Marcus said quietly. "I'm choosing to be optimistic," Helen replied. "Besides, if they wanted to kill us, there are easier ways than sending their Emperor here personally." Dr. Peter Hayes, Earth's chief xenobiologist, stood nearby with Ambassador Claire Nelson, who had been hastily appointed as Earth's first ambassador to an alien species. Both looked nervous and excited, Remember, Claire said, reviewing her notes one more time. Bow slightly when greeting the Emperor. Maintain eye contact with his central pair of eyes, and whatever you do, don't touch his ceremonial staff. The Kralaxian shuttle landed smoothly in the designated area. The door opened and Emperor Zarthax emerged wearing robes of deep purple and gold. He was accompanied by Vexith and a small honor guard. Helen stepped forward and performed the proper greeting bow. Emperor Zarthax, on behalf of humanity, I welcome you to Earth. I am President Helen Brooks, leader of the unified Earth government. Zarthax studied her with his 6 eyes, then did something unexpected. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth in what Vexith quickly assured everyone was a friendly expression. President Brooks, I am honored to be here. Your world is beautiful. Thank you, Your Majesty. We've prepared a tour of our capital and several facilities. We hope to show you who we are and what we value. Over the next 3 days, Zarthax saw things that no Kralaxian emperor had witnessed in millennia. He visited a human school where children learned about art, science, and history. He attended a public forum where citizens openly criticized their government's policies. He toured a hospital where humans used advanced technology to heal the sick without charge. He watched a concert where musicians from different human cultures performed together. Most importantly, he talked with ordinary humans. Peter took him to a university where students asked him questions about Kralaxian culture and biology. Claire arranged meetings with historians, artists, and philosophers. Marcus showed him human sporting events where people competed fiercely, but celebrated together afterward. On the final evening, Helen hosted a private dinner for the Emperor in the presidential residence. It was a small gathering, just Helen, Marcus, Claire, Peter, and Zarthax with Vexith. I must confess something, Zarthax said as they ate. I came here expecting to find warriors pretending to be peaceful. Instead, I found teachers who learned to fight. That's a good way to describe us, Helen agreed. We never wanted to be warriors, Your Majesty. We wanted to be explorers and scientists and artists, but we were afraid, so we became warriors too. Now that we know we're not alone, maybe we can be what we always wanted to be. I have a proposal, Zarthax said, setting down his utensils. For 10,000 years, the Kralaxian Empire has ruled through conquest and vassalage. We believed it was the only way. We were wrong. He looked at each human in turn. High Chancellor Vexith tells me you want friendship, not domination. I believe him now, so I propose something that will shock my people and yours. I propose we dissolve the Empire's vassalage system and create something new, a coalition of free worlds where species cooperate as equals. The humans stared at him in stunned silence. You would give up your empire? Marcus asked carefully. Not give up, Zarthax corrected. Transform. The Kralaxian systems would remain Kralaxian, but we would no longer force others to serve us. We would ask them to join us as partners. Some may refuse, and that is their right, but I believe many will choose to stay if given the choice. Helen's eyes were bright. Your Majesty, if you're serious about this, humanity will support you in any way we can. This is everything we hoped for when we first reached for the stars. I am serious, Zarthax said firmly, but I need your help. The transition will not be easy. Many in my empire will resist. Some species may try to take advantage of the chaos, and I do not know how to build something based on cooperation instead of conquest. Will you help me? Yes, Helen said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. Claire was already pulling up documents on her tablet. We'll need to draft a charter, establish protocols, create a council structure. Peter was grinning widely. 3,000 species working together. The scientific advances alone will be incredible. Vexith watched the humans' enthusiasm with something like wonder. These strange beings who had laughed at the Empire's threats were now eager to help rebuild it into something better. Chancellor, Zarthax said to Vexith, you were right about them. They are unlike any species we have ever encountered. Yes, Your Majesty, Vexith agreed, and I believe that is exactly what the galaxy needed. 2 weeks after the Kralaxian fleet's departure, Earth received an unexpected transmission. High Chancellor Vexith was requesting permission to return, but this time with only a small diplomatic vessel and an unusual request. He wanted to see humanity's military capabilities with his own eyes. The Empire, he explained, could not accept his report without proof. They thought he had been deceived or had gone mad. Admiral Kevin Barnes sat in his office at the Lunar Command Center, reviewing the request with his senior staff. Major Sophie Miller stood by the window, looking out at the gray landscape of the moon. Captain Jake Morrison and Commander Lisa Grant had been called in from Earth to participate in the discussion. "They want a demonstration," Kevin said, leaning back in his chair. "Vexith says the Imperial Council thinks he's either lying or has been tricked by some kind of holographic technology." "Can't really blame them," Sophie said. "If someone told me an alien race was centuries ahead of us after 10,000 years of dominance, I'd be skeptical too." Lisa pulled up a tactical display on the conference table. "The question is, how much do we show them? We don't want to reveal everything, but we need to be convincing enough that they take us seriously." "I say we give them the full tour," Jake suggested. "Not our classified weapons or experimental tech, but the standard stuff. Let them see what our regular military looks like. If that doesn't convince them, nothing will." Kevin nodded slowly. "All right. We'll bring Vexith and a small delegation to the Lunar Command Center. We'll show them our defensive network, our shipyards, and maybe run a combat simulation. Sophie, can you arrange for the Resolute to participate?" "Commander Ryan Foster's ship?" Sophie asked. "He'll love that. The man's been itching for some action since the Kralaxians left." 3 days later, a small Kralaxian shuttle landed in the main hangar of the Lunar Command Center. High Chancellor Vexith emerged, accompanied by 2 guards and a young science officer named Talrix. They were met by Kevin, Sophie, and a security detail. "Welcome to humanity's Lunar Command Center," Kevin said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. Vexith had learned about this custom and awkwardly grasped the Admiral's hand. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Vexith said. "I know it is unusual." "Not at all," Sophie replied with a smile. "We understand your position. Come on, we'll start with the observation deck." They led the Kralaxian delegation through the facility's corridors. Talrix, the science officer, kept stopping to examine the technology embedded in the walls, his 3 eyes wide with fascination. "This is remarkable," Talrix said, touching a wall panel. "This material, it's not metal, but it's stronger than our best hull plating." "Carbon nanotube composite," Sophie explained. "We use it for most of our construction now. Lighter and stronger than traditional metals." The observation deck offered a stunning view of Earth rising above the lunar horizon, but the Kralaxians weren't interested in the scenery. Their attention was fixed on the massive structure floating in space nearby. "That is one of your shipyards?" Vexith asked, his voice barely a whisper. "One of 12 in this system alone," Kevin confirmed. "We have another 33 scattered across our colony systems. Each one can produce 12 combat vessels per day, along with various support ships and cargo haulers." Talrix was frantically taking notes on a handheld device. "The energy requirements for such production would be enormous. How do you power these facilities?" "Fusion reactors mostly," Lisa said, joining the group on the observation deck. "Each shipyard has 6 reactors, each producing about 200 terawatts. We also have solar collection arrays and a few experimental antimatter generators we're testing." "Antimatter?" Talrix looked like he might faint. "You've weaponized antimatter?" "What?" "No, we use it for power generation," Lisa said, then paused. "Well, I mean, we could weaponize it if we needed to, but that would be kind of overkill. Our regular weapons are destructive enough." Vexith turned away from the window to face Kevin. "Admiral, I must ask directly. Can you show us your vessels in action? The Imperial Council believes your ships cannot possibly perform as my reports indicated." Kevin smiled. "I thought you might ask that. We've arranged a demonstration. Follow me to the Tactical Center." The Tactical Center was a massive room filled with holographic displays showing every ship, satellite, and defense platform in the Earth-Luna system. Dozens of human officers worked at various stations, their hands moving through holographic interfaces. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan stood at the main tactical console. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and sharp eyes that constantly scanned the data streams around her. "Lieutenant Sullivan will be coordinating today's exercise," Kevin announced. "Kate, are we ready?" "Yes, sir," Kate replied. "Commander Foster and the Resolute are standing by along with 3 of our older destroyer-class vessels for the opposition force." "Opposition force?" Vexith asked. "For the demonstration, we'll have the Resolute face off against 3 of our destroyers in a combat simulation," Kevin explained. "The Resolute is a patrol ship, one of our smaller combat vessels. The destroyers are about the same size as your heavy cruisers. All weapons will be set to simulation mode so no actual damage will occur. Sophie pulled up a holographic display, showing the 4 ships moving into position. We've also invited 3 of your escort ships to join the exercise. They'll be on the opposition team with our destroyers. Your ships will use their real weapons at full power. Full power? Vexith's scales paled. But you said this was a simulation. It is for our ships, Kevin said. But we want you to see that we're not faking our defensive capabilities. Your ships will fire their actual weapons at the Resolute. Commander Foster and his crew will defend themselves while trying to tag all 6 opposition vessels with simulated weapon strikes. In orbit above the moon, Commander Ryan Foster sat in the captain's chair of the Resolute. His pilot, Lieutenant Ben Morris, was running through pre-flight checks with practiced ease. All systems green, Commander, Ben reported. Shield generators at full capacity, weapons ready. Good, Ryan said, cracking his knuckles. Let's show our guests what a real space battle looks like. Back in the tactical center, Kate began the countdown. All ships in position. Exercise begins in 10 seconds. Vexith and his delegation watched the holographic display with intense focus. The 3 Kralaxian ships and 3 human destroyers spread out, forming a loose net around the Resolute. Begin, Kate announced. Immediately, all 6 opposition ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy and streams of projectiles converged on the Resolute's position. Talrix gasped, certain they were about to witness the destruction of the human vessel. But the Resolute didn't explode. Its shields flared with bright blue light as they absorbed the incoming fire. The energy readings barely flickered. Direct hits from all 6 ships, Kate reported calmly. Resolute's shields holding at 98% capacity. No damage. Before the Kralaxians could process this, the Resolute moved. It accelerated so quickly that it seemed to simply disappear from one location and reappear elsewhere. Ben's piloting was flawless as he wove through the opposition forces like a dancer. First destroyer tagged, Kate announced. Second destroyer tagged. First Kralaxian escort tagged. The Resolute's simulated weapons left bright markers on each ship it struck, indicating fatal hits in a real battle. Meanwhile, the opposition ships continued firing, their weapons now seeming pathetically slow compared to the Resolute's movements. All 6 opposition ships tagged, Kate said. Exercise complete. Time elapsed, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. The tactical center fell silent. Vexith stared at the display, watching as the Resolute returned to its starting position. Its shields were still at 94% capacity despite taking continuous fire from 6 ships for over 4 minutes. That was one of your smaller vessels? Vexith finally asked. Mid-range patrol ship, Kevin confirmed. We have about 2,000 of them. They're good for border patrol and escort duties, but nothing special for combat operations. Nothing special, Vexith repeated in a hollow voice. Talrix had stopped taking notes. His device hung limply in his hand as he stared at the display. High Chancellor, our most powerful warships couldn't have survived 10 seconds of that engagement. The humans barely noticed our weapons hitting them. Sophie stepped forward, her expression sympathetic. Chancellor, I know this is hard to accept, but we want you to understand something important. We didn't build all this to threaten anyone. We built it because we were scared and alone. Every human watching this demonstration is hoping that your empire will choose friendship over conflict. Because if we fight, you'll win, Vexith said softly. Yes, Kevin said honestly, but winning isn't the same as being right. We don't want to win. We want to share the galaxy with you and learn from you. Your empire has 10,000 years of history and culture. You've met countless species. You have knowledge we desperately want to learn. That's worth more to us than any military victory. Vexith looked at the Admiral, then at the holographic display, then back at the Admiral. For the first time since entering the room, he allowed himself to hope. I believe you, he said, and I will make the Imperial Council believe it too. High Chancellor Vexith refused to accept defeat so easily. He had not maintained his position for 300 cycles by giving up at the first sign of resistance. After 6 hours of consultation with his military advisors, he decided to try again. Perhaps the humans were bluffing. Perhaps their sensor readings were false. Perhaps they had simply gotten lucky with their defensive preparations. He reopened the communication channel with Earth, this time using every bit of authority and intimidation he could muster. The same 2 humans appeared on screen. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking something from a small cup, looking relaxed. Commander Lisa Grant was reviewing data on a tablet, barely glancing at the screen. Back so soon? Jake asked, taking another sip of his drink. We thought you'd need at least a day to report back to your superiors. I am not finished with our negotiations, Vexith declared. You may have defensive capabilities, but you do not understand the true scale of the Kralaxian Empire. We span 3,000 star systems. We command fleets numbering in the hundreds of thousands. We have weapons you cannot imagine. Lisa looked up from her tablet. Let me stop you right there. Your planet destroyer weapon, the one you're so proud of, has an energy output of approximately 47 petawatts. Is that correct? Vexith blinked his 4 eyes in surprise. How do you know the specifications of our most guarded weapon? Your ships aren't exactly subtle, Lisa replied. We've been scanning them since you arrived. Anyway, 47 petawatts. That's cute. Our mining equipment on the asteroid belt operations runs at 60 petawatts. We use it to crack open rocks for minerals, a voice called out from behind the human officers. Hey Lisa, are we telling them about the Exodus project yet? Not yet, Danny, Lisa called back. Let's not give them a heart attack. Vexith felt his confidence crumbling, but he pressed on. Our faster-than-light drives can cross the galaxy in mere cycles. No species has ever matched our speed. Jake nearly spit out his drink. Your FTL drives. Oh man, we analyzed those too. You're using a linear warp displacement system, right? We used those about 80 years ago. They're incredibly inefficient. You're probably getting, what, 15 light years per day at maximum? 17 light years per day, Vexith corrected, then immediately regretted admitting it. Right, well, our current standard drives do about 90 light years per day, and our experimental drives are hitting 200, Jake said casually. We would have stuck with the old drives, but they were just too slow for our expansion plans. A different voice came from the background. Commander Grant, should I mention the computer systems? Go ahead, Amy, Lisa said with a sigh. A young woman with dark hair stepped into view of the camera. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Amy Chen, Information Systems. I've been analyzing your ship's computer network while we've been talking. No offense, but your systems are running on processing power equivalent to Earth's early 21st century. We stopped using that level of technology about 150 years ago. My personal tablet has more computing power than your flagship. Vexith's scales had turned almost black with agitation. This is impossible. The Kralaxian Empire has existed for 10,000 years. We have accumulated knowledge and technology for 100 centuries. How can a species barely 200 years into space travel surpass us? The command center on the human side went quiet. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances and something like sympathy crossed their faces. Can I be honest with you, Chancellor? Jake asked, his tone more serious now. Please do, Vexith said quietly. When you've been conquering everyone you meet for 10,000 years, what reason do you have to innovate? Jake asked. If no one can challenge you, why improve? Why take risks? Why try new things? You got comfortable, and when you get comfortable, you stop growing. Lisa nodded. Humanity never had that luxury. We were alone. We didn't know if there was anyone out there, but we were terrified that there might be. So we kept pushing, kept innovating, kept improving. We competed with ourselves because we had no one else to compete with. Every nation on Earth tried to outdo the others, Jake continued. Every corporation wanted to build the best ships. Every scientist wanted to make the next breakthrough. We had a saying, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. For 200 years, we never stopped moving forward. Colonel Danny Wright stepped into view. He was older than the other humans, with gray hair and stern features. The truth is, Chancellor, we're dangerous precisely because we were alone. We spent 2 centuries preparing for a threat that might never come. We built weapons no one should ever need. We created defenses against enemies we'd never met. And now here you are, proving we weren't paranoid after all. Vexith slumped in his command chair. What do you want from us? Do you plan to conquer the Empire? What, no? Jake said, looking genuinely shocked. That's the last thing we want. We don't want to rule anyone. We just want to explore, learn, meet new people, and make friends. Friends? Vexith repeated the word like it was foreign. Yes, friends, Lisa said with a warm smile. Look, I know this is hard to understand, but humanity has been dreaming about meeting aliens since before we even left our planet. We've imagined it in stories and movies and art. We've wondered what you'd look like, what you'd think like, what you could teach us. We never wanted to fight you. We just wanted to be ready in case you wanted to fight us. Major Sophie Miller appeared on screen, her red hair bright under the lights. Think about it, Chancellor. Your empire has 3,000 systems, right? That's 3,000 different species with 3,000 different cultures, technologies, and perspectives. Imagine what humanity could learn from all of you. Imagine what you could learn from us. That's what we want, not conquest. But we came here to make you vassals, Vexith protested weakly. We threatened your world. Yeah, that wasn't great, Jake admitted. But we're willing to overlook it this time because we understand you didn't know any better. You've been doing things the same way for so long you forgot there might be other options. Lisa pulled up a holographic display. Here's what we propose. You go back to your empire and tell them what you found here. Tell them that humanity wants to establish diplomatic relations. We'll share some of our technology with you. And you can share your knowledge of the galaxy with us. No vassals, no conquest, just cooperation. And if the empire refuses? Vexith asked. If they demand we return with a larger fleet? Then we'll defend ourselves, Jake said simply. We really don't want that to happen, but we won't be conquered. We didn't spend 200 years preparing just to give up at the first real test. Danny stepped forward again. But let me be clear about something, Chancellor. If your empire comes back with hostile intent, it won't just be Earth you'll be fighting. We have 37 colony worlds now. We have mining operations in 6 star systems. We have exploration fleets scattered across 200 light years. You won't be facing one planet. You'll be facing all of humanity, and I promise you that's not a fight anyone can win. Vexith sat in silence, processing everything he'd heard. His entire worldview had been shattered in less than a day. The Empire's superiority, their divine right to rule, their 10,000-year legacy, all of it meant nothing in the face of this young, energetic, terrifyingly advanced species. I will deliver your message to the Emperor, Vexith said finally, but I cannot promise how he will respond. That's all we ask, Lisa said. Just give peace a chance. You might be surprised at how much better friendship is than conquest. Jake raised his cup in a toast. To new beginnings, Chancellor. We hope the next time we meet it's under better circumstances. As the communication ended, Vexith looked around his command center. His officers were watching him, waiting for orders. For the first time in his long career, he didn't know what to say. Set course for the Imperial capital, he finally ordered. And someone get me a full report on everything we learned about human capabilities. The Emperor needs to know exactly what we're dealing with. As the Eternal Dominion and its fleet turned away from Earth, Vexith couldn't help but wonder if this day would be remembered as the beginning of the Empire's end, or the start of something entirely new. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The stars shimmered in the darkness of space as 300 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace. They formed a perfect circle around the small blue planet that the locals called Earth. Each ship was enormous, stretching over 2 kilometers in length, with weapons ports glowing with barely contained energy. At the center of this terrifying formation sat the flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a vessel so large it could be mistaken for a small moon. Inside the command center of the flagship, High Chancellor Vexith stood tall and proud. His purple scales gleamed under the bright lights and his 4 eyes scanned the tactical displays with satisfaction. This was his 200th first contact mission, and like all the others before it, it would end with another species kneeling before the might of the Kralaxian Empire. Open communications with the planet, Vexith commanded, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. A junior officer, barely 30 cycles old, worked the controls with nervous fingers. Channel open, High Chancellor. Vexith straightened his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. He had given this speech so many times he could recite it in his sleep. Every word was designed to inspire fear and submission. He activated the communication array that would broadcast his message to every screen. Radio and communication device on the planet below. Greetings. Primitive species of the 3rd planet, Vexith began using the standard opening. I am High Chancellor Vexith of the Kralaxian Empire. For 10,000 of your years we have ruled the stars. 3,000 systems bow before us. Countless species serve us willingly. We have come to offer you a choice. He paused for dramatic effect, as he always did. This was usually when the screaming started on the other end. Join our empire as vassals and you will know peace and protection. Refuse and your world will be reduced to ash and dust. You have one planetary rotation to decide. Choose wisely. Vexith waited for the usual response. Sometimes they begged. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they tried to negotiate. But they always showed fear. Instead, something strange happened. Laughter erupted from the communication channel. Not nervous laughter or hysterical laughter. This was genuine, belly-deep laughter like someone had just heard the funniest joke in the universe. Vexith's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. His communication officer looked just as puzzled. Did their translation matrix malfunction? Vexith asked. No, High Chancellor. It's working perfectly. The view screen flickered to life, showing 2 humans in what appeared to be military uniforms. The man on the left had short brown hair and was wiping tears from his eyes. The woman on the right had blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, and she was covering her mouth, trying desperately not to laugh. I'm sorry, the man said, still chuckling. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Initiative. This is Commander Lisa Grant. We're sorry, but are you serious right now? Vexith felt a strange emotion he hadn't experienced in decades. Confusion mixed with something that might have been embarrassment. I assure you, human, the Kralaxian Empire does not make jokes. We are quite serious. This statement made both humans laugh even harder. Jake had to lean on his console for support. Lisa turned away from the camera, her shoulders shaking. Oh man, Jake said, trying to compose himself. Lisa, they're serious. They actually think this is intimidating. Lisa turned back to the screen, her face red. I'm sorry. It's just that you guys look like you came straight out of a 1980s science fiction movie. Did you design those ships yourselves? Or did you hire someone's grandfather to do it? Behind the 2 officers, other humans could be heard laughing and making comments. Check out the glowing purple lights. Very retro. Are those actual antennae on the hull? What is this, the Stone Age? 300 ships? That's cute. We have 3,000 in just the home fleet. Vexith felt his scales turning a darker shade of purple, which was a sign of agitation among his species. You dare mock the Kralaxian Empire? We have conquered countless worlds. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have technology beyond your comprehension. Jake finally managed to stop laughing long enough to speak properly. Okay. I'm sorry. That was rude of us. Let me explain something to you, Chancellor. Humanity has been alone in space for about 200 years. In that time, do you know what we did? I do not care what primitives do with their time, Vexith responded coldly. We prepared for you, Lisa said, her smile fading into something more serious. We wrote thousands of books about alien invasions. We made hundreds of movies. We created countless video games. We ran military simulations. We built weapons and ships and defense systems all based on one single terrifying question. And what question was that? Vexith asked, despite himself. What if we're not alone? Jake said. What if something out there wants to hurt us? Humanity spent 2 centuries being paranoid, Chancellor. We built everything we could think of to defend ourselves against threats we weren't even sure existed. Impossible, Vexith said. No species advances that quickly without guidance from an elder race. Lisa smiled again, but this time it wasn't a friendly smile. Want to test that theory? How about your ships run a scan on our defensive network? Go ahead. We'll wait. Vexith nodded to his sensor officer, who immediately began running detailed scans of the planet and the space around it. As the data came in, the officer's face went from confident to concerned to absolutely terrified. High Chancellor, the sensor officer said quietly. There are over 5,000 defensive satellites in orbit. Each one has energy signatures equivalent to our heavy cruiser main weapons. There are 3 planetary shield generators on the surface, each capable of stopping our entire fleet's bombardment for days. And there are multiple shipyards on their moon producing vessels at a rate of 12 per planetary rotation. Vexith felt something cold settle in his stomach. And their fleet? 3,200 combat vessels detected in this system alone. Energy signatures suggest their shields and weapons are significantly more advanced than ours. High Chancellor, if they attacked right now, we would be destroyed in less than 10 minutes. The command center fell silent. For 10,000 years, the Kralaxian Empire had been the strongest force in the galaxy. They had never encountered anyone who could match them, let alone surpass them. Jake's voice came through the speakers again, softer now. We're not laughing at you to be mean, Chancellor. We're laughing because this is the best and worst day in human history. Best because we finally have proof we're not alone in the universe. Worst because the first aliens we meet are about 200 years behind us technologically, and apparently think 300 ships is a lot. Lisa leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn those ships around and go back to your empire. You're going to tell them that humanity exists and that we're not interested in being anyone's vassals. Then if you're smart, you're going to come back with people who want to talk, not conquer. Because despite everything, we really do want to meet other species. We just want to meet them as friends, not as subjects. Vexith stood frozen, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to attack, to show these primitives the true power of the Empire. But the sensor data didn't lie. His fleet would be destroyed and the Empire would lose 300 ships and their most experienced diplomat. "This is not over," Vexith said, trying to maintain some dignity. "We hope not," Jake replied with a genuine smile. "We really do hope you come back. Just next time, leave the conquest speech at home and bring some good conversation instead. The universe is a lot more fun when you're not trying to enslave everyone you meet." The communication channel closed, leaving Vexith staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders, their faces showing the same confusion and fear he felt. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Kralaxian Empire had encountered something they couldn't conquer, and it all started because the humans just couldn't stop laughing.